Hey everyone, I'm Zach Dunham from Bantam Tools. We've got Gerard Rubio here and Carly Mick.
Hello.
So we're back on engineering from home. This is week 4 for us. I can't believe that we're already on to our fourth live stream. This is a casual affair. This is a relatively improvised event that we've been doing every Friday at 3. And as I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, it's just like selfishly just such a fun thing for me to get to do, to get to reconnect with people that I haven't seen in a while or haven't spoken to in a while, and share some stories of the engineering and design and maker world back with you all. So just, I think maybe as a quick recap to the last 3 weeks. So we started this out, Bantam Tools Engineering from Home live stream, really as a way to share stories about what it's like engineering from home. And so in the first week, we spoke with Moet Boite and Sophie Wong about very literally that, engineering from home. And then in the second episode, we spoke about supply chains and how supply chains around the world are changing and shifting, whether it's finding a China-based factory or a US-based factory, or now both, if you're manufacturing a product. And last week, we had this great conversation about education and how people are going to teach even digital fabrication in a university that does not exist in person anymore. And so today I'm super excited to talk with these wonderful people about soft goods and textiles. So yeah, please welcome Gerard Rubio and Carly Mick to Engineering from Home.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, pleasure.
Would you mind just giving a quick intro on who you are and what it is that you do? Carly, go ahead.
So I have spent my career working in textile innovation, and that has spanned from prototyping through supply chain development and machinery innovation, all related to soft goods. And I currently work for a company called Skyscrape, which is developing a thermally adaptive fabric that allows the textile to change its insulation value depending on the ambient air temperature. So we're hoping to get that launched in the next couple of years in product you can actually buy.
And I should say that we did a podcast interview with Carly where she explains a little bit more about Skyscrape. So definitely check that out as well. All right, Gerard.
Yeah, so I work at Kniterate. I co-founded Kniterate like 4 years ago. And Kniterate is a CNC knitting machine that allows you to create automatically and customize clothes with digital designs that you can make on your computer. So we are now, we started shipping machines late last year, but our plan was to continue shipping machines throughout this year, but that's been quite difficult so far. And yeah, we're at this point, and we're also releasing software updates quite often with new improvements on the software, which I think it's going to be quite cool once it's all together out there.
Are you near a machine? Like at some point, would it be possible at some point in the stream?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
We'll be sure to drop in links then to both of these sites.
Yeah, that would be cool. But
so when I emailed Carly about this 2 weeks ago, I think I was watching my wife sew together face masks for a local Facebook group that sprouted up that was like, hey, if you have a sewing machine, the local hospital is short on N95s and they need something. And so here's a design that you can drop some filter material in the back, and we're all going to collect them and sew however many you can. And it felt like I think a lot of these things, if you're making one or two, just like, how am I possibly making an impact? And yet I started to see like so many of these sort of knitting or sewing groups popping up around the country. And fast forward to last week, I believe it was, the CDC then in the US came out with this guideline that if you're out and about, you should be wearing some sort of cloth face mask. And I think maybe just to like set the stage for the discussion, let me just play this pretty sweet video from the Surgeon General here. All right.
Here's how you can make your own face covering in a few easy steps with items you can find around the house, like an old scarf, a bandana or a hand towel, or you can make a face covering out of an old t-shirt. fold it to the middle from the bottom, fold it to the middle from the top, fold it again to the middle from the bottom, and again from the top, and then 2 rubber bands, one on one side and one on the other side. Then you fold either side to the middle, and you have yourself cloth face covering. It's that easy.
All right, so it's that easy. I mean, I watched this, and Carly and I just watched this a minute ago, and you had this great point that you were like, you kind of just did a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is very, very straightforward, and it would be effective in terms of making yourself a quick covering. The biggest concern I have about that approach, which if you've got nothing else, like obviously do it, is just it's really hard to wear a face mask. Like they move around, they're sliding off your nose. If they start coming apart, like you have a tendency to want to touch your face all the time to try and like remedy whatever the situation is there, which can lead to other problems. So I think the best mask is one that you feel comfortable wearing, like kind of hands down.
Mm-hmm. Gerard, have you been, how has Kniterate been thinking about this?
Yeah, so I've been,
masks?
no, fortunately not. I've been thinking about this though, like almost every day since the whole thing started, but it kind of caught us off guard because we had this machine in a shared space in London, and with the lockdowns, it like became inaccessible. We tried to find a new space, but we didn't have enough time because everything was like shutting down. Mm-hmm. So we haven't been able to do anything. The machine's like sitting idle at the office. It's quite sad, but I've been seeing like people doing lots of things, and it's quite cool. And I actually think like knitting is a good thing. It's kind of pretty good in terms of shaping the mask, because with knitting you can output fabric with shape by like doing different types of structures or stitches. You can create like bumps into the fabric, so you create like 3-dimensional shapes, and you can make something that is complex because the face is like topologically quite complex. So right. By making a fabric that adapts to your shape, it can make something that is very comfortable. As Carlo was pointing, this is like very important point. Right. Otherwise you start like touching your face and then it's a mess. Right. So you need something that sits there and then stays like for a while.
And I think it might be actually a good time for those of people watching who don't have a really good understanding of textiles. There's basically 3 primary types of textiles. There's knitted, woven, and non-wovens. And all of these are important in this conversation. So knitted textiles are basically made out of interlocking loops. And so as Gerard was pointing out, you can use those loops to make all kinds of different things. You can almost think about it like chainmail. You can make these like crazy shapes with it. Weaving is much more rigid, so it's just like a grid that where the strings are interacting horizontally and vertically. And then non-wovens are what these N95 masks are made out of, or the disposable masks. And a non-woven is sort of a weird term. It basically just means any fiber that's laid down and adhered to the other fibers in some way. So like a felt is a non-woven. And the way that they're doing some of those molded mask shapes, it's actually blown while it's still hot. So it's like polyester fibers that are just blown while they're still melted. And then those fibers bond to each other as they get laid down in a mat. And because it's basically just this like sheet of plastic that's made out of tiny fibers, it's very moldable. So you just heat it up and you can create those compression shapes that we see in all of those masks that people are wearing.
One of the thanks, Carly. That's like, yeah, good to have some underlying terminology. Not all soft goods are made in the same way.
Yes, and they have different properties, which matters in masks.
So when the shortage for N95 masks started cropping up, did you immediately go like, oh, there's a way to solve this with much more, I don't want to say like low tech, but more like common tools that a lot of people probably have at home?
No,
or were you surprised to see
quite the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's let's see here. If you really need a mask, right? Because we need to separate the people who are working on the front lines who spend 12 hours a day with people known to have this virus. Like that is a whole different level of needs and requirements than you or I or anyone going to the grocery store. So if you're in that situation, you need something that is easy to use, fits your face, because any air gaps around there are going to be a problem. The air is going to flow in whatever way is easiest for it to go. So it's not just going to come through the front. Mm-hmm. You need something that is not going to break, that can survive moisture. So if things get splashed on you, they're really, really technical products. And to have them be something where they make a bunch of them and it fits a huge variety of faces and they go through this very rigorous testing, that is huge. That's not something that you can do at home, because it's like that testing layer all by itself requires supply chains and scientists and its certifications that we need our health professionals to have. Like if you have masks at your house, go donate them right now. Like that's the number one thing that we can do to help those people on the front line. But that's not what you and I need. You know, it's a different level.
Right. I mean that came up a lot in last week's stream too, as we were talking about this, because I think the other interesting piece about today's discussion is that for a while people were focusing, and still are focusing, on the sort of sexy digital fabrication tools, if you will, right? The laser cutter, the 3D printer. Mm-hmm. Can you 3D print one of these face shields and laser cut the actual shield part? And what's interesting now is that the sewing machine is now getting more attention as one of these tools. But to your point, like these are the output of those tools is for things that like we as civilians should all be wearing.
Yeah.
Goalie says, for civilians with limited sewing ability, is there a mask pattern that you recommend?
I guess it depends on how limited. Like the one that we just watched is totally effective. And if you don't have a sewing machine at all, that's totally fine. You can do most of this with staples. Staples are incredibly effective if you don't have a sewing machine. So yeah, fold some fabric up, staple it together, tie some strings on it. Like that's really all we're looking at.
Gerard, well, just going back to what you were saying about your machine, like give us paint a little picture for us of like, when you say you've been thinking about this a lot, have you been thinking about knitting patterns that you would use, or?
It's just knitting a mask, and also because it's an interesting technical challenge, and that's always nice to work on. And
yeah,
obviously if it can be helpful for anyone, that's even better.
Right.
That point is more controversial because knitting, it's not famous for being a good filtering fabric.
Yeah.
You should be putting like a filter or something inside. So then you would need to knit it with like a pocket, so you can insert fabric that is you can remove later on.
Right.
It's good though because it's washable. It's not good because it can be like very warm after a while. So yeah, I've been thinking about all these things and wondering if it's a good technology, if it's not. And I always wanted to try it. But yeah,
well,
I mean,
there's also, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
It's also worth pointing out, like the video we just watched made out of t-shirt, like t-shirts are all knit. Like it's
Yeah.
clearly a good material for what we're talking about right now. It's just sort of the scale of the holes. I think that's the challenge.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll develop this a little bit more. Our machine is gauge 7. That means that there are 7 needles per inch, which it's not so many. And the kind of fabric you get is like more like winter wear, like scarves or sweaters.
Chunky.
The t-shirts are like 18 gauge or super thin, like needles, and it's very dense. So that's better for filtering. Although it's not ideal because it cannot be compared to like non-woven fabrics. But yeah, so you would need to put another material with our machine.
I mean, that's the other interesting thing that I saw develop too out of this is people talking about like HEPA filter material and how you can, like, you don't need an N95 or like to your point, Gerard, about like creating something with a pocket and then like what other filter materials are still in supply. It's like, it's this MacGyver moment for all of us, right? Like what can you use in place of that because it doesn't exist anymore, you know?
Yeah. And so what an N95 is, right, is something that's filtering out 95% of these 3.3 micron particles or less. So what that actually means is your airflow is pretty low. It's actually kind of hard to wear a mask for that reason, and you don't want to feel like you're suffocating. And so if you are wearing something that has gaps around the outside, that's when you're going to get all that airflow. So if you're making your own out of these like really heavy duty filter materials, your fit is super critical. And I think that's just worth pointing out. If you're going to get all MacGyver, like make sure that you're really looking at the fit on your face.
Another interesting thing that I noticed is just the way, and maybe you have other anecdotes about this too, just the way that more mainstream textiles companies are getting in the fight. Like one sort of funny picture in my mind was like Brooks Brothers, like knitting masks, and like just like high-end apparel companies being like, yeah, we're gonna, go ahead.
There's a lot of smaller ones too. So most of the cities that you guys live in have small boutique companies, right? And a lot of them are converting to doing masks too and selling them super cheap. So if you want to support your local folks in your area, that's actually a really good place to go, is check out people's websites. And a lot of times you can get them like, $5-10 a piece, and actually throw some money down to some of the people in your community who've lost their business.
That's awesome. Is this something people should just be looking? Generally, I'm looking at some of these questions coming in too. Or do you have a link to something that's created a collection of that, or are you just?
Yeah, I can. I'll have to find it for you, and I'll pass it on as soon as we're done here.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah. How do you both think that like the textiles industry is, slowly, as this is evolving, shifting and thinking about future innovations as we're having, as like makers here are having these MacGyver moments? How are the people that do this professionally thinking like, oh yeah, we do need to incorporate that into like next year's design? Or
it's a really interesting question. I think one of the biggest things I've noticed is just having the public talk about certifications and supply chains and machinery, and having really hard conversations about what it takes to build the products we use. I really enjoy that. And I think like we look at some of these non-woven machineries that people are making masks out of, and it takes, they're $1 million pieces of equipment that might take a year to build, and just starting one up is not as easy as you'd hope. And the fact that the US textile industry has moved pretty much entirely overseas means we don't have a lot of access to this stuff right now, and we can't just turn it on. And I wonder if that'll change. I wonder if there will be more investment in domestic supply chains so that we can have that at home.
Gerard, you're kind of teed up there as the thing that you make. Making a desktop knitting machine. How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, we've been thinking about this, like reshoring this manufacturing back to our neighborhoods. It's still quite niche, I think, because it's so ridiculous. You can go to like a store and buy like a sweater for $20 or some jeans for 10. So it's really hard to compete with that, and people will always prefer that.
You're not going to pick up a knitting machine to knit yourself a mask.
But there's also like a growing demand for better built and customized clothing, and we're seeing that, and I think that's how we're like being able to produce so many machines. But yeah, we hope this moment is kind of a catalyst for people to rethink how we're doing things and how manufacturing is happening. Also, it's helping us to like see or rethink that we might not need to be buying so many things, because by being locked down, it's like all of a sudden we're like saving some money because we're not having so much spending.
Yep.
And it's totally fine, right? And maybe I hope this like lasts and makes us think if we could reshape how things are being consumed.
Yeah, I also hope people discover their sewing machines in this process, and potentially knitting, like here's a great time to learn to use the tools that you have and make some awesome stuff. Try some things, have it go wrong a few times, and then try some other things. And, if we can all learn more about textiles through this process and have more people excited to build it, great. That would be a perfectly good outcome.
What's your I was going to say desert island, but what's your quarantine getting started project for a sewing machine?
Oh, well, start with a mask, obviously.
Yeah, duh.
Outside of that, I mean, it just depends on what you like. Like, find something simple around your house that you want to do. If it's fix your jeans, fix your jeans. Like, there's tons of things that you could do. Sew some buttons on stuff. Or if you have a shirt that you really like, that's, pick the simplest thing you can and just try and sew it. It probably won't be great the first time you do it, but, forgive yourself for learning a new tool and keep plowing forward.
The just like amount of time that we're all spending working on things and reconnecting like with our hands, hopefully, and not like constantly being consumed by the news is really amazing. I'm definitely feeling that too. I mean, it's like a lot of gardening and cooking, but both of the comments on rethinking the supply chain, rethinking about how we're getting things, everyone is being forced to reckon with like some level of rationing and some level of, even just on a personal level, right? Like there are only so many eggs or toilet paper that can come into the store at a certain point, and I eat X number of or use X number of those products, and like we're all having to think about those flows. And so it is interesting as people who, all three of us, as people who work for companies that make physical goods and deal in manufacturing in some way, this work that went on behind the curtains for everyone of just like, oh, good shows up on the shelf in the store and I purchase it, and that's like, there's the company that makes it and me as the consumer, and there's nothing else that's going on behind the scenes. Like, I think that is really starting to set in for people. One of the other things that I'm curious about is like, if there were a sort of, for lack of better analogy, if there were like a heat tech equivalent, like as Uniqlo, as their heat tech line, is there like a germicidal, like sort of antiviral fabric? How much of that would just be like complete smoke and mirrors, or how much room is there for like the soft goods industry to help protect people in a way that's, I mean, maybe it's just the mask, but are there other ways that you're thinking that this could evolve?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of textiles in protective equipment in hospitals, right? I mean, it's surgical gowns, it's all of that stuff. And so there's lots of development in medical textiles around being able to clean things easily. So there's tons of work that's happening there. In terms of masks, you're always kind of fighting this challenge between the fact that if it's biocidal, it can probably kill humans too. So you don't really want to put stuff on your face that's like super toxic. But there has been developments with putting metal. So some silvers, coppers can do biocidal things, and we can interact with it quite safely. I also, when I was at NCSU doing my grad work, there was a professor there who was working on a product that was basically a dye. So if you think about like the old Tylenol, where it was like red on one side and yellow on the other, it's exactly the same dye that red side was. So it's just a red dye. And there's something about it that's sort of inherently unstable that allows it to interact with sunlight. And then because of the electron transfer, I don't even know exactly what the deal was, it would basically kill all kinds of things on its surface. And so it allowed it to be very naturally biocidal every time you exposed it to light. So it would basically be self-sanitizing.
Whoa.
Yeah, cool, right?
Yeah. So basically, building blocks exist. Someone's probably thinking about weaving copper into fabrics, or
yeah, for sure. And there's tons of research that's being done on it. One of the things, like because of our shortage right now, they're really looking at how to sterilize and reuse masks so that they're not single use anymore. Yeah. And a lot of that is like hydrogen peroxide fogging, and so they'll do that, dry it out. Part of it, I mean, if you're wearing it, it's not just viruses that you're concerned about. It's like everything in your body. You don't want to transfer that to somebody else. So you have to be a little careful. You don't want them to be damp and then get moldy and then try and reuse them. And then everything that you do, if it's like UV sanitizing or hydrogen peroxide sanitizing, you are degrading the elastic on it.
Yeah. I was reading about that.
Yeah. If you're trying to figure out like your whole chain, you basically need to identify people who pick up masks at hospitals, take them somewhere to sanitize them, double check their elastic, replace their elastic, and then redistribute them back to hospitals. And building out even chains like that is quite complex. And we're really in, I would say, a leadership void in that, because we don't have people whose job it is to figure out that we need that and how you're going to set it up. So a lot of our challenges are not even just textile based. It's like these systems thinking problems.
Also came up in our second stream too, where I posed the question to Scott, like, what if the president could just snap his finger and force all of the, tech companies in the US to begin making, all the products that we're lacking. And it's like the manufacturing is not the hard part. It's all of the systems infrastructure that doesn't exist currently.
Yeah, exactly.
The UV germicidal thing, actually, I neglected to point this out, but if anyone is listening and they actually applied for this, we did like a little bit of a machine donation to folks who are actually designing or prototyping some sort of medical technology with some of our CNC machines. And one of those groups, Deep Local, who we sent a machine to in Pittsburgh, they're actually putting together some sort of UV, I guess it would be UVC LEDs as a germicidal box that you could, put something in and expose it, and then whether it's a mask or something else. But the really tricky part is that you're essentially breaking down that material at the exact same time. And so it's like, you also need a counter that says like, limit 3 per mask or,
I was thinking about this too, about your equipment where, if you could model your own face, and obviously this is just for you or me or like in any given individual, you could model your own face, machine yourself a little tool, and then use non-wovens like vacuum bags or the filters for your furnace or any of these sorts of things. You could potentially basically make a 2-part mold and just make yourself a mask that fits exactly to your own face, which I think would be a ton of fun.
Oh, that's a really good idea. You would, it would be like a soft tooling mold. It would be like an aluminum mold or something.
Yeah. I mean, you could even do it out of probably MDF. I mean, something cheap or easy. You basically just have to heat up the fabric because it's plastic. So just get hot and get the mold hot too. Stick all 3 of them in the oven and then clamp them together and let it cool down and see what happens.
Someone on Oya in the chat is saying, "Oh, this is happening now." We're like a little bit out of sync, I think, with the chat and our conversation. Maybe sometimes. Oh, and then Rob says, "I have friends who are doing that molds." So
nice, awesome. Cool. I'm glad to hear. That's what I'd be doing if I had one right now.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I wonder if we could do this with machining wax too, as a.
Would the wax melt if you?
How hot does I think it's pretty decent for temperature resistance. I'd have to look at it, but
I think around like 300 Fahrenheit is probably where I'd start, and give or take a little.
Probably melt wax then. It's wax and plastic, but yeah, you probably melt it at that point. Okay.
Yeah.
This is awesome. There's a bunch of good stuff in the chat too right now. Someone's saying fitscrubs.com kills. Just fitscrubs.com uses embedded silver to kill viruses.
Yeah, there's actually a Spanish company. I was looking for the link and I found it. And they use silver particles and they sell yarn. And I think they've been doing already some masks and stuff. I'll copy the link, and I think there's some information about how it works, how the technology. Yeah, it's on the chat.
Oh, cool.
I was thinking about this thing you were talking about, the mold. I'm not sure it makes sense. Maybe with vacuum forming, you could make a...
Yeah, vacuum forming would be great.
A cheaper one.
Yeah, I love it. I don't have a vacuum former, regrettably.
Yeah,
you can make one easily, but that's another.
Leave a link to that.
Yeah, yeah, with a vacuum machine. I did one some ages ago, and it was fun.
I love this. The tools. Yeah. Now the MacGyvering the tools moment is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a bunch of tool nerds on a podcast. I think it ends here.
Oh, this is so good. Everyone's dropping in good links to soft goods masks and knitted or sewn things. This is great.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone who's dropping these in. Also, Carly has a wonderful video that she put together, and I'll drop it in the chat when we wrap up. What else? What am I missing? What are you? I guess to ask it another way, like what are you hoping comes out of this in terms of textiles, and I guess both from the invention side and also from the consumer side? Is it?
Well, I guess I'll start us off. I'm hoping to see people do, I mean, it's some of the things that we've touched on, to reconsider how they think about textiles and how challenging it actually is to sew things and build stuff out of fabric. I think if everyone's doing this, then we'll have more sympathy for the people who build our products in general and realize that a $5 t-shirt is, and that's not very much money for an awful lot of work that went into it. And so I hope we think about that and our domestic supply chains. And I hope we think about the decision-making that's necessary for making these really complex decisions and these really complex systems work, and respect the people who are participating in that entire process. And if your hospital's asking for something, make it for them, and just think about who is making the request and how much effort it really takes to get that information out there.
Gerard, what about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed by this kind of grassroots movement, people helping each other, as Harley was saying. It's really incredible. All these new ideas are coming up, and how we all like collaborating together. And I hope just like politicians take some note on that, because everyone's like going with its own agenda, and I think we have to work together on this one, because it's affecting everyone. And yeah, I hope we can continue like doing these live streams and learning more about what we are doing all together and just helping each other.
I second that.
Yeah, I second that too. It's it was like, admittedly like overwhelming and super chaotic, all the Slack groups and the Facebook groups that were popping up in the first week of this, but now it's just really beautiful to see the commitment and the dedication that people have been really like pushing things through with. And like you're saying, whether it's doing an impromptu, here's how to make bread. I'm, a person in my kitchen, and you need to do this too, probably, to, here's how to, make PPE for yourself, is it's pretty amazing. Like the maker in everyone is really coming to the surface. So that's been pretty beautiful. Anything else that we should touch on before we wrap up?
I mean, I want people to feel comfortable trying to build stuff. This is always important to me. And whatever your normal medium is, if you want to try and make masks, like really just try. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be easy. Just like trying things and then being nice to yourself about what that output is, and giving yourself the chance to try again and try it with different materials and really explore and dig into stuff. I hope that people take this extra time that they have right now to try new things, and then take the time to appreciate that they did try new things, whether or not it turns out to be their medium of choice.
Yeah, we have some time. Let's use it.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, like go back to like making things with our hands, and it's quite interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. This is awesome, and such a nice way to round out the week and get some real legitimate insights from some experts in the textiles industry. I dropped in a link to Carly's how-to on mask making. I And we'll post that on the show notes page as well, on the Engineering from Home on Bantam Tools site. And we'll throw up some links to Gerard's wild knitting machine, Kniterate. So again, we've got Gerard Rubio, co-founder of Kniterate, and Carly Mick here joining us from Skyscrape. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, it's really my pleasure. And if people have other questions that they want answered about fabric, drop it in the comments to that video and I'll maybe make some more videos. I've been enjoying it lately. So if anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll leave my email down there if anyone wants to chat or know a little bit more about anything we discussed. Feel free.
Carly, Gerard, see ya. I'm going to hit end stream, and this sort of unceremoniously cuts us off at like all at once. So,
well, thanks so much for having us. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too. Cheers. Bye, everyone.